Okay, so some people believe that there are actually five timelines in Dragon Ball Z instead of four, and I'm basically going to tell you why some of you are pretty much wrong. Now, when I was going to the DBZ wiki site, I noticed there was a difference as opposed to as it was a few months ago, where they said there was four timelines. A few months later, now they're saying it's five. The reason people are saying that there is a fifth timeline is because they say in Cell's timeline an alternate future Trunks came and destroyed Goku and or not Goku, Frieza and King Code in age 764. And the reason I'm going to tell you wrong is because Cell's timeline is considered the original timeline. So that's kind of the that's kind of impossible because Cell's timeline is an original timeline, meaning there should be no one uh, to go to the timeline but from it, unless you are returning to it. You can't go to an original timeline. It's because of that timeline you're traveling to another timeline. Another reason why it doesn't make sense is because if Trunks and an alternative Trunks did do this, then the events of Cell's timeline wouldn't have gone the way it did. Because if you think about it, Cell's timeline is pretty much identical to the history of Trunks' timeline. I mean, you have Goku that died of the heart virus. The Z Fighters die at age 766 when the androids arrive. Gohan dies at 780, 13 years after fighting the androids for so long. Trunks then turns into a Super Saiyan the first time. He then gets defeated by the android. It's really similar to the hot timeline, I would say. So if an alternative Trunks really did show up to Cell's timeline, then things wouldn't have turned out the way it did, because it wouldn't make no sense if that were the case and nothing changed, if you get what I mean. I will explain the sort of plot hole. When Cell was talking to Piccolo, he did indeed say that a certain Trunks did defeat Frieza and King Cold. What I think is two situations or two outcomes to explain this plot hole. Either one, it was very bad writing, because we had to realize Akira Toriyama does not really he's not really consistent of his writing sometimes, because sometimes when it's not with just the Android saga, but it's just other things that I can get into another time. But especially with time travel, he's not really consistent with it, and things kind of just don't make sense. Or my second theory is that Cell was referring to the present Cell that would have eventually developed and in that 24 years time in the main timeline. Because if you think about it, Cell had went back to the main timeline and the hot timeline too, which I'll explain in the later video. But he was also in the main timeline, and by the time Frieza, King Cold, and Trunks arrived, he had already been underground developing for the last year. It's possible he could have sensed the fight or even saw it, and then he then realized, okay, so since it's Trunks now and not Goku, then that means that the spy robots will be taking the cells from them and blah blah blah. So I really think I really think when Cell was talking to Piccolo, he was referring to himself in the main timeline that would have, developed in that 24 years time, which I'm going to say age 791? Because 24 plus age plus 767. Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess I'm right, but whatever. So yep, there's my theory on that. Please comment below if you would like to